Oh, such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 40% off select styles, plus a free professional measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome, folks. This is Steve Moore. This is the More Money Show. We're feeling pretty giddy right now on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. It's a little chilly out there along the East Coast, but in many areas like the area that I live in, it's a white winter wonderland. So it's a beautiful day to get out and just, bundle up, but you'll love the sunshine and the fresh air. And the other day I went sledding. Believe it or not, I am 64 years old, but my son and a couple other kids were out there sledding. So I thought I would give it a try and I said, which is the fastest sled? And they said, oh, take the red one, so it was one of those slippery, slidey ones. And I went flying down and I was like headed right to a tree. So I had to bail out and I twisted my knee and I was so embarrassed. They all said, Mr. Moore, are you okay down there? And mostly my pride was injured, but it's just so wonderful to be outside. It kind of reminds me of my youth, by the way. I grew up in the Chicago area where, winter lasted 4 or 5 months long, and we would skate and we would sled and all of these things. But I guess maybe I'm a little too old for that now, but I do have a need for speed. So anyway, I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. We are live. We are in color. We are taking your calls today. By the way, I say this every week, but most of the shows that you could turn to on the radio right now are just playing canned stuff, canned commercials or canned, shows that have already aired. We're live. We're in color. We're here for you. We're going to be taking your calls periodically throughout the next 2 hours. If you're new to the show, we're proud of the fact that we follow the great Larry Kudlow on the Kudlow Show, and then More Money is on every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. I wanted to let people know because people keep saying, Steve, how can I contact you? And I want to make sure that everyone knows the best way to reach me, and that is I'm going to just give my email out to folks, steve@unleashprosperitynow.com. Steve at unleashprosperitynow.com, and you will be able to get your messages to me. I love running into people in the Washington, D.C. area, or when I go to Pennsylvania, or when I go to New York, of course. People are so nice. They come up to me and say, I love to listen to the More Money Show. And that just warms my heart to know that people have fun. And we try to make it fun. I try to keep it a little bit light. It's a weekend, but we try to be serious too about the issues of the day. I told you folks, if you're a regular listener, I've been saying for the last month, buckle up, strap up, because it's going to be, it's just going to be like a cannonball out of a cannon when Trump takes office. And I was right. I mean, what has happened in the last week, I've been in Washington for 40 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. I really have not. And I was just actually on Fox News, and they keep talking about the first 100 days. And I said, to my friends at Fox, hey, you got it wrong. It's not the first 100 days. It's the first 100 hours that have been so amazing. And I'm excited, by the way, about these. I'm just going to go down the list of some of the things that Trump has done. And there's so many scores and scores and even hundreds of these executive orders that I'm probably leaving out a lot of good stuff. And by the way, when I take your calls at 1-800-848-9222, and excuse me, in about 12, 15 minutes, we'll start taking your calls, because the question of the day, and I would, as usual, I want to hear from the ladies. I want to hear from the women. And I also want to hear from Democrats and independents, because I want to hear, if you're not necessarily a Trump supporter, I especially want to hear from you, because I want to hear if you have complaints about some of the executive orders. I want to hear what they are, if there's something you object to. And by the way, there are some of these executive orders that I'm a little nervous about. I do think that we should have certainly pardoned the January 6th protesters who never went into the Capitol. I'm not so sure that the ones who did go into the Capitol should have been pardoned, but I don't really know all the details of that. But so look, I'm not here to cheerlead everything Donald Trump did. I like most of what he did, and so I'm going to go down this list. And also, if there are things that I have not listed that you really like, I want to hear from you, because these are some of my top 10 or 12 executive orders. And by the way, I'm very proud of the fact that Trump got a lot of these ideas from me and Larry Kudlow and Art Laffer and Steve Forbes. And, we've been hammering these things. And it's just so cool to see a president who actually just comes into office and just does it. So here's a few of the things that I really like. First, the stay in Mexico, remain in Mexico. You cannot come into this country illegally. And if you do come in illegally, you're going to be taken out of the country. That just is the way it's got to be, because we cannot have 10 to 12 million illegal immigrants in this country. And you all know me. I'm very pro-immigration. I think immigrants are great for our country, but they have to come in legal ways. I do think we should expand legal work visas for people want to come here, as my grandparents did and your grandparents did, to make a better life for themselves. That's what America is all about. But you got to come in legally. And we cannot have drug runners. We cannot have criminals. We cannot have people with health conditions coming into the country. It has to be legal. So he's going to enforce the stay in Mexico rule. And if you want asylum, first you have to show that you're a legitimate asylee. You can't just come into the country. Here's another one. It has nothing to do with economics. It really doesn't. But I love this one. We are going to fly the American flag, the Stars and Stripes. We're going to fly that flag on our embassies, on our government buildings, and we are not going to have the Palestinian flag, and we're not going to have the Black Lives Matter flag, and we're not going to have the LGBTQ flag. It's going to be the Stars and Stripes forever on these buildings, and that is the patriotic thing to do, and I love that executive order. It's just a little thing, but it shows Trump wants to put America first. Now, some of the more serious ones that will have already an impact on the way we live and the way the economy functions. Trump has overturned Biden's electric vehicle mandate. And thank God, I hate those mandates. I think this is a free country. We believe in the freedom to choose. And when it comes to buying cars, people should be able to buy whatever car they want. And I've told you all, if you're a regular listener, you know this, that my wife and I have a hybrid, and we love it. We love the hybrid. It's half the time we use the electric battery, and half the time we use good old fashioned gasoline. It's very durable. It's flexible depending on what our travel plans are. So I'm not against electric battery cars. I'm against the government telling us we have to buy them. And I'm also against the government telling the car manufacturers they have to sell them and manufacture them, because they've been losing $40,000 for every car. That's not a business model that works. So goodbye electric vehicle mandate. Folks, when you go out and buy a car now, you can buy whatever car you want, as it should be. No Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is gone. We're getting rid of all the Green New Deal, and we are going to produce all of our energy, our oil, our gas, our coal, our nuclear power, our hydropower. We should use every ounce of energy that we can get. And it should be an all of the above strategy. And yes, at certain times, in certain places, wind power can work. And some places like Phoenix, Arizona, solar power can work. But we're never gonna be able to get all of the energy we need in this great, great dynamic country of ours with windmills and solar power. We're going to use everything, and we're no longer going to be dependent on OPEC, on Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, these countries that hate us. I mean, it's stupid policy. You don't forget, it was exactly 4 years ago that Joe Biden killed the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have gotten the oil and gas from places like North Dakota and Texas up to places like Boston and other places. And Joe Biden, right out of the gate, just declared war on American energy. Well, no more. We don't have someone who's declared war on American energy. We have someone who's going to produce more American energy than any other president ever. Okay, what else have we got here? Okay, the global minimum tax. Remember that? That was Janet Yellen's thing. Well, the global minimum tax is gone. There will no longer be a 15% global minimum tax. We're not going to take that anymore. Here's one that I think, we're going to have a federal hiring freeze. Great idea. Folks, we're losing $2 trillion a year in Washington. Let me say that again. We are practically bankrupting our country by borrowing $2 trillion a year. That's 2 with 12 zeros. So no, if you got a business that's losing money, you don't go on a hiring spree. We're going to have a hiring freeze, and we're going to lower the number of federal employees, which is several. I think it's like 3 million. We're going to lower that through attrition. When some people leave, we're not going to hire necessarily new people unless it's an essential service. I like that. Freeze on federal hiring. Because, by the way, you all know this if you listen to my show regularly, the biggest employer over the last 2 or 3 years under Joe Biden has been government. We keep adding government employees, and we're not getting the private sector employees because they're crowding out our private businesses. A couple of other ones, and then we'll take a break here. By the way, I'm just skimming the cream here, folks. I mean, there are many, many dozens of other ones that I don't even have time to mention. But here's one. I forgot about this one. Trump is pulling the United States out of the World Health Organization, which is a sinister organization which lied to us and completely mishandled the COVID. So we're out of there, folks. We're out of that organization. We're not paying the bills for a sinister organization like the World Health Organization. They lied to us. And here's another one. Federal government employees must show up for work. Gee, what a concept. You have to show up for the job if you're going to get a paycheck. Now, look, I more and more work telecommuting, but the idea that people just don't come in at all, they're playing tennis or golf in the middle afternoon, and then they're getting a federal paycheck. No, that's not going to happen anymore. So those are some of the ones. Oh, did I mention the Paris Climate Accord? We're out of that again. Remember, Obama put us into that anti-America Paris Climate Accord. Trump took us out of it, thank God. Biden came in, put us back into it, and Trump's back in, and we're out of there. And permanently, we're going to shut the door, slam it, so we never have to have these crazy international treaties where America gets screwed. Because that's what always happens. You know this. By the way, I want Trump to pull us out of the United Nations. I really do. I think the United Nations is an organization that simply defies America's security concerns, and they think that we're the problem. They think the United States is the problem, not Russia, not the Iranians, not the criminals and terrorists. The United States is responsible for all the problems of the world. And by the way, for the privilege of hearing all of these foreign governments attack us at these UN meetings, we pay the bills. That's ridiculous. We're not going to do it. No, Trump has not taken us out of the United Nations, but I would advise him to do that. We don't need the World Health. We don't need the United Nations attacking the United States and Israel. So that's a mouthful. I'm exhausted already, but you can tell I'm joyous. I am. I've never seen a week like this. I've never seen a gutsy president who comes in and does things that are so much in America's interests, putting America first. And I want to hear from you, folks. 1-800-848-9222. What of these executive orders do you like? And almost more importantly, I want to hear from which ones don't you like? Are there some of these executive orders that you think are wrong? Do you think we should be flying the Palestinian flag on American buildings? Or do you think that federal workers should not have to show up for work? Or do you think that Do you think that we should hiring more workers, not less, and on and on and on? So, do you think the government should force you to buy the car that the government wants you to buy? I say no, but I'd love to hear from you. We'll take our first break, folks. 1-800-848-9222. As soon as we come back, we'll start taking your calls. This is the More Money Show on WABC on a beautiful Saturday afternoon.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Boy, I'm exhausted already. I mean, just trying to keep up with Trump. By the way, I have worked with Donald Trump. I've traveled with him over the years. The guy is indefatigable. I've never seen anything like Donald Trump. I think he sleeps about 4 hours a day. What he did on Inauguration Day was amazing. He got up at 5 a.m. He went to the church service in the morning. Then he had the tea over at the White House with Joe Biden. And then he had the inauguration on Capitol Hill. And then he started signing executive orders. Then he went into the Capitol Arena, the stadium here in Washington, because it was so cold they couldn't hold it outside. And then had a 2-hour festivities there. And then, of course, then he went back to the White House, signed more executive orders. Then he went to the dinners, and then he went to all the parties that night. Then he came back and he signed more executive orders. And I mean, really, my wife and I, we got tired at about 6 or 7 o'clock on Inauguration night because it's been such a crazy weekend, and we're supposed to go some of these balls, and we just turned to each other and said, "We're too tired. We have to go home and go to sleep." And Trump, then we get home, we turn on the TV at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and there's Trump. He's still going. What an amazing guy. I mean, he is a freak of nature, and I say that in an admirable way. But I wanted to point out something else. I find it very funny that there are these new bumper stickers in Washington that Democrats are plastering on their car, and I just get a big kick out of it. It says, you may have seen these. It has the numbers 01-20-2029 and 01-20-2029. Trump's last day in office. They can't wait to get rid of Trump. He's been in office for 7 days. They're already waiting for him to get out. Well, if you're a Democrat, sorry, folks, you probably have 1,350 days or so to go before Donald Trump will be out of office. By the way, remember, he cannot run for re-election. So he's served his first term. This is his second and only remaining term. So that's one of the reasons he's in such a hurry. He knows he has to get out and do things right away, and he is doing that. So we have some callers. I'm going to take some of your calls now before we get to our guests. We have several really great special guests this afternoon, but I wanted to start out from hearing from you. So we will take some calls now. We have my producer says we have one line open. So if you want to call in and weigh in on this about what Trump has done right, what he's done wrong, are there executive orders that you'd like to see him issue that he has not issued because he's just getting started, and he and his people listen to this show. So you can essentially talk right to the president. I'm not saying the president listens to it, but I know a lot of his advisors are listening to the show, and they get a lot of ideas from you. So you are able to influence policy by listening to the show and also by calling in. That 1-800 number for the More Money hotline is 1-800-848-9222. Let me say that again, 1-800-848-9222. We have one line open. And, by the way, the easier way to remember this is 1-800-848-WABC. I think, Mr. Producer, we have James on the line. James, are you there?
Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, James.
Steve. Hi. First and foremost, I absolutely love what Donald Trump is doing and the speed with which he's doing it and the reasons why he's doing it. But I am very concerned over his launch of this Trump and Melania meme coin, where he's generated.
I'm sorry. Say that again. His what?
I'm very concerned about his launch of the Trump and Melania meme coin, in which he's generated billions of dollars in wealth on paper and millions of dollars in fees. I see this as a massive conflict of interest, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I'm glad you called, James, because I have some uneasiness about that one too. So I think great minds think alike. I have to confess, I don't know all the details of it, but I don't want any kind of, people making money off of, President Trump. And certainly you raised the issue of a conflict of interest. There may well be. And so I'm glad you called, because I've been thinking. Now, how do you see what's exactly the problem? You think that the Trump family could make money off of this, or what do you think?
Well, as I understand it, they've already made millions, if not billions, off of this, because it's a meme coin. It's a cryptocurrency, which means just like Bitcoin, he owns 80% of the coins, which means, based on what I've read, he's made personally $8 billion off the valuation of the meme coin. He has made more money off his meme coin in 24 hours than Bitcoin made in 3 years.
Wow.
So he can borrow against that, take loans out against it, just like you would Bitcoin or a stock. And I think
what I'd like to see him do.
Concerning.
James, what I'd like to have him do is donate that money to either charity or to, how about using some of that money to reduce our national debt? I have to say, folks, I don't know all the facts about this, but I think James makes a good point. It's one of the few executive orders that I have some problems with. James, thanks for calling. Mr. Producer, do we have any other callers yet? Doreen, thank you so much for calling. What do you think about the first week, Doreen?
Oh, my God. I'm so excited. I feel safe. I feel safe again. And, James just was bringing up something about Trump making all this money. What about all the money that he had to lay out for all these ridiculous laws, fines that they had against him? I mean, he doesn't take a salary. I mean, give me a break. So the guy's making a couple of bucks. That's why he's in the position to do things. Because he's a businessman and he's smart.
So, Doreen, tell me what some of your one or two favorite executive orders are.
Well, promises made, promises kept, even down to the littlest thing about the Indian tribe that he's giving them a preference again. He's noticing that. I mean, even down to something like that. JFK, RFK, my girlfriend was saying the other day, oh, what is he bothering with that for? I said, because he made a promise. And he's keeping even the littlest promises that he made.
Yes. And
that's what I respect about President Trump. I wish I live in Jersey.
Yeah, no, Doreen, a great point. Thank you for calling, by the way. You make a great point. And it's something that I've said over the years, especially in his first term, because he's just starting that first term in office, the second term. But in the first term, when Trump was president, I was asked by CNN to be one of their political commentators, and they paid me a lot of money to go over there to do it. So I figured, okay, I'll make some money for the first time in my life. And I did CNN. And we do the show. I was on almost every night on CNN. I was the one Trump person. It was usually about 1 versus 6. And they'd always say, well, why is Trump doing this? And why is Trump doing that? And I'd say, because he said he was going to do it. That's the thing about Donald Trump. He's not a normal politician. He actually does what he says he's going to do. And that shocks people in Washington. They're not used to that. Most politicians break their promises on day one. And again, I'm not here to tell you I'm in favor of every executive order. Some of them make me uneasy, but these are the things he told the American people he would do, and he is doing it. And by the way, most of them really are common sense. They are common sense. Of course, if you want a government paycheck, you should have to have to show up for work. By the way, the reason I was hesitating there is I just got a note from my friend John Katzimatidis, the great owner of this radio station, and he just texted me. And this is hot off the presses that Kristi Noem will be the next Secretary of Homeland Security. She's been confirmed by the Senate. Thank goodness. I love Kristi Noem. I think she's perfect for that job. She's the 2-term South Dakota governor, and she was tapped by Trump in November. So, John Catsimatidis, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think she is an excellent choice for that. Do we have time for one more caller, Mr. Producer? Okay, well, let's try to take who's been waiting the longest, Mr. Producer. Walter, thank you so much for calling in. We're a little short on time, and I got a couple of others. What are your one or two favorites, or what's your least favorite executive order for Donald Trump?
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a little concerned about his pardoning of people that did commit violence. I know you said the same thing, that you had some concerns about that. I think he should have been a little more selective in his pardoning of these guys,
Yep, I agree with you, Walter. I mean, I think you're confirming what I was saying earlier. And again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, folks. I'm an economist, but I do think that, by the way, we're going to be hearing from Brandon, who started the Walk Away campaign. He was a Democrat who became a Republican. He was there on January 6th, but he was put in jail. He's been in jail for several years. He never went into the Capitol building, and he was just exercising his First Amendment rights, and he was put in jail for a long time. I have a big problem with that. I have a really big problem. And I admire Trump for pardoning people who did not cause any problems. They're just there exercising their First Amendment rights. But when it comes to people who might have assaulted a police officer or something like that, no, I'm not so sure it makes sense to be pardoning them. All right, let's try to squeeze in one more caller before we have to take our 1:30 break. Who's next, Mr. Producer? What's that? John, John, are you there?
Yes, quick. I'll keep the call short. Some kind of provision to never eliminate currency, dollars, change, and so forth. There's a push to try to get us more cashless. It's not the right thing. It's un-American. We need to keep cash constantly in society for flow. It's freedom. It represents everything for the country. A lot of banks now really make it difficult to take money out. They ask for your name when you make a deposit. They want ID and so forth. It's becoming like they're trying to discourage you from using cash or anything with money transactions. Something to that provision. And that's what to say.
Well, great point. I think the dollar is going to continue to be the world reserve currency. I think the dollar is going to strengthen because of what Donald Trump is doing. One more quick one before we take our break, Mr. Producer. Who we got? Ed, we don't have a lot of time, but thanks for calling. Okay. What do you think?
Okay, Michael, I love you and Larry, by the way. The caller, Doreen, she's absolutely right. Trump deserves whatever it is. I have no idea what he's making on those mem coins. He absolutely deserves it, what Joe Biden put him through. By the way, I voted for Trump 3 times. I would vote for him another 30 times. I love him.
Well, I voted for him 3 times as well, but I'm not going to vote for him 4 times because he is constitutionally prohibited from running again. But so tell me, we don't have a lot of time, Ed. What is your favorite executive order that Donald Trump has issued?
Well, I got to tell you, I was just watching the news this morning. I mean, he's issued so many. That's a tough question. But just watching him this morning in Los Angeles, telling he's going to executive order to bring water down.
Yes,
to those poor people that have no water. I mean, come on. I mean, common sense. Common sense is back.
You are so right, Ed. Great. I'm so glad you called, Ed, because you're right. I watched that this morning, and with the incompetent mayor of Los Angeles, they ran out of water. They're 3 miles away from from the Pacific Ocean. They've known for many, many years, decades, that the risk of forest fires. It's cost $100 billion in losses. Thousands of Californians have lost their home and their life's property because of complete incompetence by the mayor, by the city council, by the state legislature, by Gavin Newsom. And it is almost comical to me that people think that Gavin Newsom should be the next president of the United States when he has screwed up California something mighty. So, folks, we'll be right back. We're having fun this afternoon. I think we're all in a joyous mood. Even some of my Democratic friends are kind of happy with what Donald Trump is doing. We will be right back. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
I know every operating
At my
system
last
like the
job,
back of my hand.
I
When it comes to
25 years of experience and have worked with several people from your company. I've been recognized for my passion. My team is everything.
LinkedIn delivers candidates who rise above the rest. With an up-to-date view into shared connections, skills, and interests you won't find anywhere else. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. What an honor to be in front of this microphone and to be able to talk to you all every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. We are live. We are in color. This is not canned. It's not, a show from 6 months ago. So I'm thrilled, by the way, with the callers. It's been fantastic. This is the highlight of my week, to be able to talk to you about what's going on in the country. I learned so much from the calls, from what is on your mind. But I want to shift gears for a minute, because one of my favorite Congress women in the entire Congress is on with us. And you know her from Fox News. You know, she's been on WABC many times. Victoria Spartz. She is a firecracker. She is from she represents the great state of Indiana. She was born actually in the Ukraine, and just in her first few years in Congress has shook things up. Representative Sparks, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your very nice introduction.
Well, I've got a lot of stuff I want to ask you about, but I knew you were, were born outside the United States. Until I read your bio, I didn't realize you were born in Ukraine. And this is not my area of expertise. I'm not a foreign policy person, so I'm just kind of pedestrian in my views on this. But I've had some reluctance of sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. Of course, I want to support the freedom fighters, but how do you see this all playing out now that Donald Trump is president?
Well, I completely agree with you. And when I actually demanded a few years ago, the first person in Congress demanded oversight of the American weapons and money of our taxpayers, I was dragged so hard that I am pro-Kremlin, because I'm asking where the money is spent. I thought that is a constitutional job of Congress, to actually know what's happening with our money and what strategy we have. But I definitely, this war has been mishandled, and it started under Obama times, and then, and when President Trump was in office, putting a suit with the strength, peace through strength, and he didn't move. And now, unfortunately, it got into very difficult situation. So there is no easy resolution at this point. And unfortunately, it will be very hard to have a long-term resolution. But I think President Trump will be accomplished, at least to put at least some stop to this insanity, what is happening, because a lot of people are dying, and and that will be up to the countries there to figure out what leaders they elect, and they will have to think about that.
Now, do you still have relatives, or you must have a lot of friends still in Ukraine?
I have some. My sister, my mom live here, but I still have old grandma and have some distant relatives there. But it's brutal. Wars are brutal. That's why, I was actually grew up with Soviet Union, and I understand how hard it is to take the power back when you lose it. Ukraine been independent now for such a long time, and they're still fighting for freedom. So that's why it's important for us to fight now so we don't lose our freedom.
So I want to ask you about, I'm talking to Representative Victoria Spartz. She is from the great state of Indiana. She is a Hoosier. I'm an Illini. You're a Hoosier. I grew up in Illinois. And by the way, Indiana was our big rival when I was growing up. But it's a great state. It's a Midwestern state. It's very conservative. How did you get involved in politics in the first place?
Well, honestly, just got sick and tired of, what's happening in the country, and got upset with the government and decided that need to do something about it. And a lot of good people want me to run for office, and I guess I was crazy enough to do it.
Was the fact you obviously have a Ukrainian accent, was that an issue at all with the Hoosier voters?
Listen, it's, don't criticize my Yankee accent, Steve. You're a Yankee too. So, and Illinois makes Indiana look as good. So, so I have a little higher standard, but it helps us to have such a lower standard in Illinois. But truly, it's kind of a testament, that we're a country of immigrants, legal immigrants. And, I wasn't elected by immigrants, but my fellow Hoosiers who trusted me to fight for their freedoms and trusted that I will not let them down. So, when I speak too fast, some of my people say, Victoria, it was so good, but it was so fast. I said, listen, if you would understood like everything what I have to say, I would probably get, almost 100% of the vote. You're still able to trust me, not understanding about that. But, but it truly, testament to the American people and really the values and the appreciation of hard work and appreciation that people that willing to stand up for our freedoms and rights.
It's what makes America great. How old were you when you came to the United States?
Well, I was almost 22. That's why I cannot get rid of my Yankee accent. So I was an adult, so I came after college, met my husband in the train in Europe, got engaged. And after college, I moved here with one suitcase, actually flew to Chicago, young adventures, read about the America from Alexis de Tocqueville and a lot of freedom-loving economists, and I always believed in that. And when I've seen some things happen, and I feel like we cannot give up, there were very, very dangerous trends of government control, of socialism and takeover of industries and centralization of power. It's very dangerous, and it's hard to get out of it, as we see it now.
So one of the things that I just, to this day, it just surprises me, and I'm confused by it, which is that, when I meet people like you, Congresswoman, who lived under communism, who've lived under socialism, you see firsthand how degrading it is, how it puts people in poverty, how it takes away their basic rights as human beings, the rights that we in America take for granted. And yet we have so many Americans, a lot, especially the young people, who think that socialism and communism is the way to go.
Well, I think it's a sad reality, but it's like a frog in a boiling water. Americans been boiled, for a while, right? So when you put me here, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is terrible. This is resemblance of Soviet Union, collective responsibility, all of this collectivism, all of this agenda that I grew up with, that a lot of people die and a lot of people still fighting for that, to have freedom. So, but a lot of Americans, become too comfortable. It's a normal cycle. That's why it's important for us to, to make our children stronger, to teach our children, to teach future generations how they're going to be keeping this republic. And I think that's a lack of education. Our educational system is so broken, and we have to fix it, that our kids understand what makes us the greatest country in the world. And it's really only the freedoms to pursue happiness. Nothing else. There is no difference between people around the world.
Well, amen to that. And I'm just going to correct you on one thing you said. You said it's because of a lack of education. I mean, that's partly true. But, it is true that our, basic or grade schools and our high schools are not teaching American civics and American history. But the thing that's really, really frustrating to me, Congresswoman, is the more education, the more college, the more advanced degrees, the more these people are in favor of communism and socialism. It's like they're being indoctrinated.
Well, I think I have to correct myself. You're right. Proper education. We're not teaching fundamentals. We're not teaching values. Most Americans, I've grown up in the Soviet Union and post-Soviet Ukraine. I read a lot, Alexis de Tocqueville, about the democracy of America, a very inspirational book for French aristocrats that talk about why America was great, what he was surprised to see. So we don't need, when I taught at college a little bit myself, I would talk to my students in the business school, and I said, whether you like Karl Marx or Hayek, have you ever read, have you ever heard what Karl Marx have to say? So I would read sometimes, and they're like, wow, that's very utopian, that's very strange. So we're not teaching fundamentals. We're not teaching fundamental economics, fundamentals of history, of mathematics, of science. So the people with no fundamentals, they can think. That's what empowers you. And we're not doing that. And this has to be fixed.
I'm talking to Victoria Spartz. She's a congresswoman from the great state of Indiana, a patriot. And there's many reasons I wanted to have Victoria on But I wanted to ask, by the way, the only communists left in America are in the faculty lounge at Harvard University at Yale and these these institutions like that. But I wanted to ask you, I've been asking all my listeners this afternoon, and I want to ask you the same question. You've been there right on Capitol Hill in the last week. You've seen this flurry of, I think we're up to something like 250 executive orders, Congresswoman, by Donald Trump. And I'm asking people, what are some of your favorites? Because one of the things when you were talking, I was thinking about the fact, one of my favorites is not really that consequential, but it's very symbolic. Trump is saying when we fly the flag on our embassies and our government buildings and so on, that it should be just the American flag, not the LGBTQ flag, and not the Ukrainian flag, and not the Palestinian flag, and not the Black Lives Matter flag. What do you think about that one?
Well, listen, it's just common sense. It's kind of unfortunate that we have to have even executive orders about that. But you can see that President Trump, he's an unusual politician, that he put his money where mouth is, and he actually delivers on his campaign promises. It's very refreshing to have a leader that doesn't just campaign and then after the election do something totally opposite, like a lot of them do, including President Biden, but what's happened here, he's actually delivering what he promised. And I think America needs it because we need to build trust back in the leaders that govern the country. And I think it's very, very, that's been lost. And I think Congress is next to actually show that we can deliver, because I was just saying, I kind of was joking that, Congress had lower approval rate in the Senate president that we just had. That's how bad we are.
So I agree with you. So what are a couple of your favorites? I mentioned the one on the flag. I like the federal hiring freeze. I like the fact that federal workers are going to have to show up for work. But what are some of the other ones that you think are important?
Well, I think the very important one, I think that could be, some people can say controversial, but it is related to January 6th. And, the people who voted January 6th, I think it is something that truly a lot of people got in the mix and their lives were destroyed. And there are some people that, maybe came with a bad intent, but there are some people that were just Americans that came and be unhappy about their government. And this is really a freedom to actually go and say, I am not happy how government is governing our country. Otherwise, if you don't have a right to come and tell Congress that you're unhappy, then it means that it's dictatorship. So we have now dictatorship of opinion and intimidation of people, and a lot of lives of people were actually destroyed. So I think that was very powerful executive orders. I know that, there is he's getting a lot of heat from that because they tried to paint, January 6th, that it was some, that everyone here come with violent, intense. People were with kids and strollers. Some people just came because they're just sick and tired of the government that doesn't serve them.
That's
and
right.
I think that, and it is actually very true. So we better wake up, because if we don't wake up, including Congress, we'll have much more people showing up there. But I think that was probably very, very important executive order to let some of these people not to really suffer and use a federal law like Sarbanes-Oxley law. To use Sarbanes-Oxley law, I mean, I used to do audits. I worked for Big Four. I was Sarbanes-Oxley implementation. I couldn't believe they would use that law to try to put very high, significant charges on people.
So, by the way, speaking of audits, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I don't know if Trump has done an executive order like this, but I would welcome an executive order like this. Many of these federal agencies, they can't even pass a basic audit. They can't tell us where the money is going. And I would love you all in Congress to require every single federal agency, if they're going to get a dime of our taxpayer money, before you give them money, they have to be audited and show us how they spent the money they already have.
Well, I 100% agree with you. Hopefully you'll talk to President Trump about that too, because that's something I try to push in Congress. We have Department of Defense. We audit it, and it's government audit. Right? It's not even like a private auditor that, the standard is much low for government audits. It's way lower, right? But they disclaim an opinion. It's so bad that they cannot even express their opinion, and we continue giving blank checks. We have so many programs that they say they're corrupt, they fail audits, everything is bad, and no one ever looks at that, and we continue giving blank checks. I mean, this is like completely abandoning duty, Congress, of fiscal accountability, fiscal responsibility, and oversight.
So, Congresswoman, we're up against a hard break in 45 seconds. So very quickly, last question for you, and I very much appreciate so much your coming on the show. Can you assure me that we're going to get this tax cut, the Trump tax cut, made permanent? Because it's very important to our economy. I know my listeners want to see, let's make the Trump tax cut permanent. Let's get rid of taxes on tips. What are you going to get this done?
Well, listen, we have to get it done. But as you know, Steve, we have a huge problem with spending. So we need to deal with the spending side. As you know, there are two sides to the equation. We need to keep taxes low, but we also need to get rid of a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in spending. Healthcare is one of the big beasts over there. We have to deal with that. And I think if we have a solution to that, I think we're going to get it done, and it's going to be discussion next week.
Good. Yeah, because you're right, but the Trump tax cuts actually paid for themselves. There was no revenue loss. Let's cut the taxes, and then let's do the budget and get to a sensible budget so we're not and I know, by the way, you're the leader of this movement for fiscal sanity in Washington. Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming on the show. This is the More Money Show, and now we're going to hear from my two favorite financial analysts, and I'm talking about the Paynes, who are going to talk to us about how to make more money.
Hey, it's Ryan Payne and Bob Payne from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne. Coming to you every week on the More Money Show, talking about the markets, the economy, and your retirement. And Bob, man, oh man, another great week on the street of dreams, as you like to say, and I'll say it, great week to be an American. Man, it's like we're on all 6 cylinders right now, 8 cylinders. I don't know. Things are moving.
Well, here we are, Rye. We're in the middle of the decade, right? We talked about the roaring 20s 5 years ago. Well, we're in the 5th year of the roaring 20s. And last 2 years were phenomenal returns in the stock market. Looks like we're off to the races this year as well.
Yeah, and I think the good news about this year is we're seeing the rally broaden out, right? It looks like the entire economy is starting to do really well. And that's being reflective of the fact that you see small cap stocks doing well, right? You see financial stocks doing well, a lot of dividend paying stocks doing well, which is great, especially if you're a retiree, because what do retirees need? Income.
Yes, I'll tell you what, it's all about growth and income, right? You need your money to grow to offset inflation because that hasn't gone away, right? But cost of my eggs are still pretty high, right? Cost of gas is still pretty high. The prices went up. They didn't come down. Inflation is moderating, not prices.
Well, I think what we don't realize either is the consequences of having solid growth. And if you look at the growth of the economy right now, I mean, that's the only word I can look for, Bob, in my economics books is solid at 3% growth. Well, that means probably more inflation.
Well, I think, this is why investing is so hard. You watch the financial news, you think you're educated, and you think, wow, if I put my money in the S&P 500, I'm going to be diversified across the best 500 companies. Well, first of all, we know that's not the case. And second, if you don't own small companies, you don't own mid-sized companies, you don't own thousands of great American companies by not investing in those indexes.
Yeah, and I think more importantly right now is the income game is the one you got to be thinking about, because that S&P 500 pays about a 1.5% dividend or yield. That's not great when you're trying to plan for income and retirement. And I think more than ever right now, to your point, Bob, inflation hasn't gone away, and you really have to think about not only having income come into your portfolio, but that income has to go up over time to keep up with your cost of living.
Well, the market's always trying to fool you. We had a great, I call it the Trump bump, right? Right after the election, the market went up. Well, after a couple of days of going up, it went straight down. And as a result of it, most investors turned bearish, right? People are very bearish on the market right now. And of course, the market's going straight back up, and it's so deceiving, right? It's just the great deceiver.
Well, it's a wild roller coaster ride. And that's why, we're big advocates of you want to build your portfolio around your goals, right? And, the one thing that we're finding right now, and we're sitting down with different clients and looking at their projections going out, is they need that income. And they need to figure out a way to get it. And look, interest rates have come up a lot, right? On a bond portfolio now, you can get some real income. And again, if you properly broaden out your diversification or exposure to the stock market, you're getting in plenty of dividends right now so that you can keep your lifestyle intact. But you've got to be really proactive with your strategy.
And that's why you can't be deceived by some of these commercials, right? I'm back in Florida. There's a commercial running like this. If your advisor is not putting this investment will get you 30% return immediately on your deposit and then a guaranteed 10% growth in your retirement income, then you have the wrong advisor. And then at the end of the commercial, in a very, very low voice, they tell you about, well, none of these investments are guaranteed and the insurance company can't pay it. It's amazing. What people try to do. And if you have an annuity right now, you're not hedged against inflation. Matter of fact, you have something that will not help you with inflation.
Like we said, Bob, insurance products, they're like Chinese food. They taste so good going down, but you feel so empty later. And that's the problem, right? With a lot of those pitches about getting that income for life, it's not adjusted for inflation. And that is what you have to think about. The Fed, they've cut interest rates a lot. We keep looking at those money market funds that used to pay 5%. They're almost under 4% right now. And we say this every week. You're still paying taxes on that 4%. And inflation is still about 3%. So when you factor that in, you're not making any money on your money. And you need your money to grow over inflation retirement. And I think that's what everyone has to think about right now.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we have bond yields, right? We have interest rates that are back to normal. They're the highest we've seen in the last 15, 16 years. Especially municipal bonds. I mean, those yields are tax-free. And if you're paying any taxes, and hey, even if you're in retirement, when you take your required minimum distribution, that puts your income up because that's ordinary income. You're able to invest in municipal bonds right now. If you're in the highest bracket in New York City, you're going to get the equivalent of almost an 8% taxable bond right now, right?
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? It's not what you make, it's what you take. We say it every week. So really looking at tax efficiency as you go into the new year is critical right now. Also, what you have to think about, and no one thinks about this in a bull market, is you need to protect the downside, right? Whenever you have lots of good years in a row, it's usually followed by a couple bad years. And we don't know when they're going to come, but I think that's not being focused on enough is protecting the downside. And this is like, if you want to own bonds in your portfolio, make sure they come due. Make sure you don't own bond funds here. Again, the money in the stock market, make sure it's not concentrated because you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So really protecting your assets and growing your assets is the name of the game. And I think right now it's risk on. So a lot of baby boomers are forgotten that they need to protect their assets as well, because when things change, no one's going to warn you ahead of time.
Well, I think what you're talking about, Rise, reversion to the mean. And I just don't understand why you're being so mean right now. I want to enjoy this bull market. I see my portfolio value going up almost on a daily basis, but you're absolutely right. You have to have a strategy based on what your family needs, not based on what your neighbor's doing or what your friend's doing. I mean, it's like any of my buddies that go to the casino, somehow none of them ever lose, right? It's the same thing when people are speculating in the markets. You need an investment strategy that has growth and income. So important to have that income.
And I think it's a big mistake right now is projecting out your returns based on your most recent experience. And I've met with quite a few couples lately where it's like, well, I did so great in this account, I'm just going to let it run. Well, the problem is, again, nothing comes in neat lines, right? And whatever's doing well right now, probably at some point won't do well in the future. So you've got to project things based on long-term returns, not just based on that things have been really good lately. And I think that's a huge mistake, especially when you're planning for retirement.
Well, I tell you, one of the things that we're focused on at Payne Capital Management this year is rebalancing your portfolio back to the sleeping point. We want our clients to have the highest probability of achieving those goals. And I'll tell you, buddy, as your brother always tells me almost daily, you have better outcomes with more income.
And if you're thinking to yourself right now, okay, Bob and Ryan, I get it. I need income. I need to protect my portfolio and I need to think about taxes. Well, here's your shot to do it. We keep 10 slots open for the entire show. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, myself and Bob will run for you our famous Total Financial Master Plan, and we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. There's not a firm out there that will do this work up front. We go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We'll give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, and we're going to hone in on every financial issue you need to address today, whether it's that income plan for retirement. How do you take Social Security? How do you draw from your portfolio in the most tax-efficient manner? How do you factor in inflation? We're going to build you a dynamic income plan so you don't run out of money. And we're going to look at diversification. Markets have been wild the last couple of years. I don't need to tell you. Has your portfolio been up and down like a yo-yo? Or have you been sitting in cash, CDs, money market funds, paralysis by analysis, can't figure out what to do? we're going to put together a full investment game plan. We're going to tie it to your goals, show you how to grow your wealth, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you those high cost, tax inefficient products like annuities, insurance products, brokerage products, mutual funds, structured products. We'll do a deep dive of every investment you own. We'll show you how to reduce the cost on your investments, optimize your portfolio for taxes. Not what you make, it's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We have 10 slots if you saved over $1 million for your retirement.
All you have to do is text or call. That's 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or you can just simply call us at 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC. If you're one of our next 10 callers, you've saved over $1 million for your retirement. Our team of financial advisors and certified financial planners will help you to create your own unique total financial master plan. Now, there's no obligation, there's no cost, but there won't be a plan if you're not one of our next 10 callers. So don't miss out. Give us a call at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC.
Hey, more about myself and Bob and our firm, Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne. Simply go to BeBullish.com. That's BeBullish.com. Stay tuned. We got more money coming your way.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. We're on every Saturday afternoon on WABC and other affiliates throughout the country. Every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. We are live. We are in color. We're taking your calls, having a great time. By the way, it is beautiful, sunny winter day all across the East Coast. It's chilly. So I want people, after the show is over, bundle up, put on your scarf, put on your mittens, put on your hat, and get out there, enjoy the sunshine. And if you're in an area that's snowed, we have snow all over the place where I live. It's just a white winter wonderland. It's beautiful out, crystal. And so, I've always said the best ways to remain healthy is to get fresh air and sunlight. I just came across the news that from the Wall Street Journal that the CIA now believes the theory. Let me just read this again because I want to make sure I get it exactly right. That the theory that COVID came from a foreign lab is very likely. Wow, that is an incredible finding. I'm going to say it again. CIA now favors lab leak theory on the origins of COVID-19. Gee, who funded these labs? Oh, gee, let me think. Was it the American government? Was it Anthony Fauci? It well might have been. And by the way, that this is so outrageous that Anthony Fauci was preemptively pardoned by Donald Trump. And I got a meme. Somebody just sent it in to me. I just think it's I don't know if I should laugh or cry when I read it, but it's a picture of Anthony Fauci. And the meme says, nothing says, quote, trust the science quite like a blanket preemptive pardon like Anthony Fauci got. So I wanted to bring on the show this afternoon my good friend and colleague and one of the smartest guys I know on public health issues, Phil Kerpen. He works with me at Unleash Prosperity. He's also the founder of American Commitment. You see him on Fox News all the time, Phil Kerpen. Phil, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure, Steve. But you just misspoke there. You said Trump pardoned Fauci. It was Biden, of course. Oh,
sorry.
We can't let that hang out there.
Thank you for correcting me. Of course, Biden was the one who preemptively. By the way, have you ever seen that happen before, where someone is pardoned before they was convicted of a crime?
No, these were very unique. And it wasn't just that one. He had a whole bunch of them. He did the same thing for. He did the same thing for Milley. He did it for 6 of his family members. He did it. So this is breaking new ground. Every member of the January 6th. Congressional committee and all of their staff So he's breaking new ground with these, hey, they haven't been charged, but I'm going to pardon them of anything and everything that they've done. And the Fauci one and all the ones for his family members, they go all the way back to January 2014. And, for the family members, we kind of get why, because of the Burisma and the deals with China and all the stuff that was going on when he was still vice president.
Yeah.
But the Fauci one was a real head scratcher because what we had all assumed if a Fauci pardon came was that it would be to pardon him for committing perjury to Congress, which he did on multiple occasions. You remember all those exchanges with Rand Paul when he just flat out perjured himself.
Yes.
And so I thought it might go back a couple of years. That it went back to 2014 to me means they're really concerned that there may have been criminality in what you were just referencing when he was funding this risky virus research at the Wuhan lab. And, we'll never know for sure whether that's what resulted in the COVID virus. But I mean, the geographic coincidence has always been, a little bit hard to ignore, that the pandemic started in the exact same city where this virus research was taking place. And of course, so much evidence has now been destroyed that we'll never really know with certainty. But the fact that the CIA assessment of the Biden administration thinks that the most likely scenario is that it came from the lab is pretty interesting, as is the fact, Steve, that they never released this assessment publicly. They had reached this conclusion, but we're only finding out now because Ratcliffe has been confirmed and taken over. And so you've got a Trump CIA director who's now saying release the Biden CIA's report that they developed but never released.
So one thing I don't get about the whole story of COVID is that, look, I believe Anthony Fauci is one of the great villains of our time. And I think that you're right. I think he did perjure himself. I think he should be in jail for lying to Congress. I think there is some evidence about what happened with the Wuhan lab. And yet my own university, I went to the University of Illinois last year, they gave Anthony Fauci their Man of the Year award. So what is it with the left that they just seem to worship Anthony Fauci?
Yeah, it's weird. He's still a huge hero to, about half the country. Basically, everyone on the political left still loves him. I think because, they saw him as sort of like the anti-Trump during the pandemic. That forgives all sins apparently. But it's very strange. Al Franken, I saw on X a couple days ago. Great hero, Anthony Fauci's a great. I'm like, what are these people? I mean, even if let's say the thing didn't come from a lab and all of that, we can't prove it. That's true. I mean, he blatantly lied to Congress over and over. He said we didn't do any gain of function research. Then we got all these documents that they did. We know that his friend, the quote unquote FOIA lady at NIH, was telling them how to destroy documents after they'd been requested. I mean, all of this stuff has come out. It's like we have it in front of us now. I mean, so, I don't know. You could say I don't think what he did is criminal, I guess, but how do you still think he's a good guy or a hero or anything like that? That I don't get.
It's crazy. So I wanted to ask you about some of these executive orders because I think it's just some of them are really amazing. But the ones that have to do with health, for example, something you've been lobbying for a long time for, Bill Kirpin, is the pulling the United States out of the World Health Organization so we don't have to pay their bills. Why do you think Trump did that?
Well, this is the big one. The World Health Organization is a total failure. They've not done anything to improve the health of the world. They have politically been essentially in the pocket of the Chinese. They behaved atrociously during the pandemic, and all they've done since is sort of claim that there's about to be another pandemic, and they want to do all the same things over again. And so the U.S. saying we're no longer party to them and we're not going to fund them is a big deal. Of course, Trump did this toward the end of his first term, and then Biden put us back in. So, one of the things I am excited, this was an incredible week. Everything that was done was incredible, but I'd really like to see a lot of these things, codified by Congress, because otherwise it can just pendulum swing back when a Democratic president comes back.
Right.
But it wasn't just the World Health Organization. There were three major withdrawals in the first week of international agreements: World Health Organization, Paris Climate Treaty, and the OECD tax cartel. And that one almost got overlooked.
Yes.
They're all huge. They're all huge. And so I think we got a very clear signal right out of the chute that Trump really means it when he says America first. We're not going to be constrained by bad international arrangements in all these different policy areas.
Yeah, I think I like those three that you've grouped together because all three of those are against the interests of America. And we tend to pay the bills so that it's almost like we wear a kick me sign And I've never understood that.
Treaty, this is the craziest thing. There was this picture that people were sharing around of like every other country in the world is in it, and we're out. And it's like, well, yeah, because it rips us off. Of course, every other country is for a deal where we pay a huge fortune and they get the benefit of it. Like, that's not a mark against us or Trump pulling out.
So I'm getting a lot of texts and so forth from our listeners because they know you're a health expert. You're not a doctor, but you do know the data. So people are concerned about the flu season. What are we seeing this year? Is it COVID or is it – because I know a lot of people have gotten sick in the last few weeks, and they've been sick for about a week. What's going on with the virus?
Well, it's interesting. This actually was the first winter respiratory season really since COVID came on the scene where there was not very much COVID. It was like not even close to being the dominant virus. In fact, we had a lot of RSV, which was kind of everywhere, and that peaked, kind of last week of December, first week of January, but it's still at pretty high levels. But we had a lot of flu, and we still do have a lot of flu, and it probably has not yet peaked also. I mean, I'd have to go look at the latest numbers, but it was still rising the last time I looked. And it's almost all flu A, but it's both the regular seasonal H3, but also the H1 swine flu has also been very, very prevalent. So there's a lot of flu going around. If somebody's feeling flu-like symptoms, it probably is in fact actual influenza this time, not COVID.
So it's not COVID, is what you're saying. It's just the ordinary flu.
Probably not. I mean, there's still some COVID circulating. But this is the first winter we've had since COVID came on the scene where it's at very low levels. It has not been the major sort of winter virus.
I'm talking to Phil Kerpen. He is the president of American Commitment. You see him all the time on Fox News. He is also one of the world's expert on COVID, but he also works with me at Unleash Prosperity. Thanks again, Phil, for taking a few minutes out of your Saturday afternoon. I know you have a bunch of kids to take care of, but before you go, I wanted to ask you a question that I've been asking all of my guests this afternoon. What are two or three of your favorite executive orders or actions that Trump has taken? Now, we already talked a little bit about the health-related ones, but what else do you like out there? Or by the way, are there any that you oppose?
I've pretty much liked all of them so far. I'd have to go look. There might be one or two that I don't love, but I really, to me, the biggest one, other than the ones we've already talked about, was the reversal of the electric vehicle mandates and all the regulations and all of that stuff. He had one big sort of anti-green energy craziness one that's actually loaded with a whole bunch of stuff. But the electric vehicle mandates are the single most expensive regulation in U.S. history, and of course, it's not so simple. The executive order doesn't mean it's done. It means he's asked the EPA to reverse it, and they've got to go through a whole process or else they'll lose in court. But the fact that he's following through on that, I think, is the most important thing of this first week, because a lot of industry people were lobbying to break his campaign promise and not do that. And he ignored them and did the right thing on that. That's huge.
Well, this is a president who does what he says he's going to do, which is really remarkable for a politician. Phil Kerpen, have a wonderful Saturday afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us. Folks, when we come back, I've been looking forward to this all afternoon. Well, I'm going to be talking to my friend Brandon Straka. Most of you know who Brandon Straka is. He is the founder of a group called Walk Away. It was a group that was founded, 10 or 15 years ago, of Democrats who said, I am out of this party, does not represent me anymore. And he has an amazing history. He was thrown in jail for political purposes. And thank God that Donald Trump has just pardoned him. We're going to hear Brandon's story when we come back. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
This is the More Money Show. We're having a lot of fun on a Saturday afternoon, kind of keeping it light, but celebrating the amazing executive orders and pardons that Donald Trump has issued in his first week, basically in his first 100 hours. I was telling Fox News earlier, you keep talking about Trump's first 100 days. It's really the first 100 hours. He has done more in 100 hours than Joe Biden did in an entire 4 years. And most of the things Joe Biden did were bad for the country. Well, I promised you that I was going to bring on my good friend Brandon Straka, who runs a group called Walk Away. And I met Brandon, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. My wife is a huge fan of Brandon, so she's the one who introduced me to him. But Brandon, you received a pardon from Donald Trump, well-deserved. First of all, congratulations. You deserve that pardon. You were really treated like a political prisoner under the Biden administration. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, Steve, thank you so much for having me. And listen, if I could say, Walkaway is not even 7 years old yet. So, Steve, don't make us older than we are. We haven't known each other that long. Okay.
It seems like I've known you longer than that, but yes, I mean, and I remember you had the parade in Washington. Tell people what Walkaway is.
Yeah, so I started Walkaway in May of 2018. We are the largest national movement of former Democrats who have walked away from the Democratic Party. And basically, we began as a testimonial campaign on Facebook, people sharing their stories about why they're walking away from the political left and walk away. And then in 2019, we became an official organization traveling the country doing college campus events, minority-focused town halls, debates, educational videos. And we've grown to, at this point, about 750,000 people have joined the movement. And tens of thousands of people, have joined, have shared their video and written testimonials. So it's really. So how
do people go to your website to see those testimonials, or how do people find it?
Yes, well, so that's a longer conversation. But after January 6th, Facebook banned the Walkaway campaign.
They shut you down. Are they going to, Brandon? Are they going to put you back up again?
Well, we're currently working on that right now. So I'm working with the Attorney General of Nebraska, which is the state I'm living in right now. And we're currently in conversations with Facebook. I can't at this moment tell you what the outcome is going to be, but we are actively working on trying to get the group restored if it's possible. But in the meantime, we have launched another group. So if people want to join the new #Walkaway campaign group, they can do that on Facebook, and I hope that they will. And our testimonials also live on YouTube, the #Walkaway campaign YouTube channel.
I'm sorry, say it again. Walkaway campaign?
Yes, it's the #Walkaway campaign, our YouTube channel. And and they can also visit our website, walkawaycampaign.com.
So what were some of the, it was very controversial when you started Walkaway because, many of the people, as you said, most of the people had been Democrats. What do you think was the major motivation? So for so many of these hundreds of thousands, now millions of Americans who have walked away from the Democratic Party, what went wrong?
Well, the key element is always betrayal. Each person's story is different in one way or another. Right. But the consistent element that exists in every story is the recognition and realization of betrayal. That there's this moment that happens in everybody's life where they say, hey, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. And so, for instance, with some people, it was the COVID shutdowns. It was the economic lockdowns and the kind of authoritarian approach to masking and shutting people down. For other people, it was that the Black Lives Matter group was allowed to just burn our country to the ground. And Democrat elected officials were saying, well, this is a racial reckoning. There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, there's so many things that have happened the 2020 election and the media. My God, the media. People are seeing all the time now, more and more and more, the way that they're being lied to and manipulated by the media. So I think when they have that feeling of betrayal, they say, I can't do this anymore. I've got to walk away.
And so, by the way, I think you were on I saw you on Laura Ingram's show the other night on Fox News. You did an amazing job, and I know that they got a huge response from that. Well, let's talk about what happened on January 6th. Tell people your story, because it is, I've always had these nightmares, Brandon, because I worked for Donald Trump, that in the middle of the night, there'd be a pounding on my door, and I'd walk to the door in the middle of the night. There'd be 4, FBI agents with machine guns to take me away because, I was a Donald Trump supporter, which is, kind of metaphorically what happened with you. But if you don't mind, could you tell people your story about what happened and tell people? It's a daunting story.
Yeah, and Steve, it's not metaphorical. I mean, that's literally what happened to me. So on January 6th, I was a scheduled speaker for what was supposed to be a permitted event on outer Capitol grounds. And then I started getting text messages from people saying, we're hearing that people are going inside the building and something is happening. So I approached the Capitol from where I was from the east side. And as I walked up toward the Capitol, there were 0 closed barricades. The barricades were open. There were no police officers, literally not a single police officer on the east side of the building.
By the way, hold on, Brad. Stop right there, because I know almost all my audience knows this, but the person who was in charge of the security of the Capitol building, of course, was Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker. And I've always believed that January 6th was a setup. But go ahead. I mean, that's amazing that you saw no police.
There were no police. And all of this is on my video. I was telling see, and this is the thing people don't understand, because the left-wing media for years would play the same footage on a loop of what was happening on the west side of the building. I wasn't on the west side of the building. I was on the east side of the building. And on the east side of the building, there weren't any officers over there. So I walked up to the Capitol in a crowd of thousands of people. And when I got there, there was a man standing up at the top of the steps, and he was shouting, "They opened the doors. They're letting us in. We're going in." So I walked up to the top of this stairs on the east side, and when I got there, the doors were open, and I stood outside of the building for 8 minutes shooting a video. I never entered the Capitol on January 6th.
You never stepped foot in the Capitol?
Nope. I didn't get within 35 feet of walking into the Capitol. Okay. And
by the way, you were not armed. You did not have any weapons or anything of that nature.
No, of course not. Okay. No, I was there to.
Yeah, I just want to, for the record, I wanted. Okay, so go ahead. Then what happened?
Yeah, no. I was there to speak, and so so a group of people were trying to push their way in the Capitol. I stood there for 8 minutes filming. And then a man came out of the Capitol after 8 minutes and got on a bullhorn, and he said, "They've cleared Congress. Everyone left the building. Move out, move out." And I immediately turned around and I left. And I took the video that I had just filmed and I uploaded it to Twitter. And 2.5 weeks
by the way, again,
later,
just for the record, so but during that whole period, you never entered the Capitol.
I never entered the Capitol,
and you had no confrontation with the police.
Correct. I didn't. No conversation with the police. I didn't witness anybody breaking windows or fighting with police officers. Nobody was rioting. I didn't see nothing.
Okay.
So 2.5 weeks later, a team of FBI agents in tactical gear raided my apartment at dawn, got me out of bed, put me in handcuffs, began stripping my apartment of my computers, my hard drives, thumb drives, camera equipment, phones, clothing, etc., and paraded me through my apartment building and took me to jail. And I spent 2.5 days in jail. And when I got out, I learned that the government was charging me with 2 felonies and a misdemeanor, and threatened to add a 3rd felony charge if I didn't take a plea deal, which I did. And so I signed a Class B misdemeanor plea deal in which the government lied from top to bottom about what my experience was at the Capitol.
Well, hold on. So did you have a lawyer?
Yes, I had 2 lawyers.
Yeah. So they did. It sounds like they didn't give you the best advice then to sign this plea deal.
Steve, there was no choice. I don't think people understand what it's been like dealing with the government in these January 6th cases.
Right.
This is not This is not normal jurisprudence. This is Marxist lunacy. And look, the alternative is to go to trial in Washington. I could have gone to trial. But they're getting a 100% conviction rate because you've got a district in this country where 93% of the people in this district voted against Donald Trump.
Right.
Donald Trump.
This is an important point that Brandon is making. You cannot get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. If you're a Republican, you just cannot. It's impossible because you've got a city that is over 90% Democrat. And so if you're going to have a jury and the prosecutors are all Democrats, so it's a very scary situation. The reason I wanted Brandon to tell this story is because it could happen to any of us, folks. I mean, but the grace of God goes me or you or anyone else. So it's a scary story. But I'm sorry to. By the way, Brandon, we got to take a break in a minute or two. Are you able to hold over? I don't want to abuse your time.
Sure.
Okay.
No,
well, anyway,
no
we've got another couple of minutes before we have to take a break. But go ahead, because this is an amazing story, folks. Go ahead.
So essentially what I was saying is that, I've said this many times, I'll say it again. It was never a question of how do I win and how do I lose. It was always a question of how do I lose the least. When you go up against the federal government, you're never going to win when you go up against the federal government. You only can try to figure out what is the best path to come out of this with as much of my life intact as possible. For me, I made the choice to take a plea deal because I knew I would be found guilty at trial on multiple, and I'd be a convicted felon and all likelihood go to prison for several years.
Well, so Brandon, hold on. What was the felony? What was it?
So they charged me with 2 felonies. One was called knowingly occupying restricted grounds. So in other words, trespassing on the grounds of the Capitol. Now, see, this is very interesting because everybody who went inside the Capitol got a misdemeanor for knowingly occupying a restricted building. I was outside of the building on the grounds, and they gave me a felony of knowingly occupying restricted grounds. First of all, I didn't know I was occupying restricted grounds. That wasn't true. But second of all, the idea that it's a felony to stand on the grounds of the Capitol is insane. But secondly, they charged me with another felony that they called impeding law enforcement. And I said to my attorney, what are they talking about? There were no police officers on the East Side grounds. And he said to me, well, in the video that you're shooting, he said there's one video or one police officer that can be seen about 35 feet away from you walking through the crowd. And as he's walking through the crowd, somebody snatches, he's carrying a plastic shield and somebody grabs it. And when somebody grabs it, you hear several people in the crowd go, take it, take it, take it, take it. And he said, the FBI is saying that that's you. The FBI was saying that you were the one shouting, take it, and they're charging you with a felony for impeding law enforcement. And to get those charges, go ahead. Sorry, Steve?
Sorry, did you did you have like a bullhorn or something, or?
No, I didn't do it. It wasn't my voice. That wasn't me.
Oh God, it's amazing. I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. It's just the absurdity of this whole thing is just mind numbing. So you had to sign the you never went into the Capitol. You never impeded law enforcement. Do you think that the reason they went after you so aggressively is because of the organization that you founded? Do you think that had something to do with this?
There's no question because they said that. I mean, if you read the 8-page charging document that the FBI wrote against me, the vast majority of it is about walkaway. And it talks about, this guy is an influential political leader. He's an activist with a large following. People are listening to him. Like this is
it's amazing. Okay, Brandon, we have to take a hard break now. Stick with us, folks. Brandon's going to come back after we take this message. You got to hear the rest of this story. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show, and I'm continuing my conversation with my friend Brandon Straka, who, if you missed part of this story, it is a spine tingling. It is a harrowing story of what our government put Brandon through so unjustly. And I want you all to listen to what Brandon is telling us, because this could happen to any of us. This is how sinister the government was under Joe Biden's presidency. And it's this kind of thing should not happen in America. So Brandon, thanks again. Welcome back. So continue, if you would, with your story. If you're just joining us, Brandon was put in jail and was sentenced to a felony conviction for his appearance on Capitol Hill on January 6th. He never touched or confronted a law enforcement officer. He never went into the Capitol. He was simply exercising his First Amendment rights to peacefully protest, and yet the rest of his life was thrown into turmoil. But thank God Donald Trump has pardoned Brandon. So Brandon, continue with your story. So after you take this plea deal, which was basically shoved down your throat, as you said, you really didn't have any alternative. Then what happened next?
Well, yeah. And one thing I'd like to correct is I didn't plead guilty to a felony. I pled guilty to a misdemeanor. They did charge me with felonies.
Okay.
And this was part of the leverage that they use to, basically overcharge people and intimidate people. And, and again, I want to remind people, We're talking about a 100% conviction rate in Washington, D.C.
Oh, my God.
And they would not release jurisdiction of any of these cases. The J6ers have to go before a D.C. judge and a D.C. jury. And one more thing I'd like to say quickly about this assertion about me with the police officer. So, again, they were claiming, and they would not let this go. They said that they put this in my plea agreement that I signed, that I witnessed the crowd taking a shield from an officer, and that I shouted, take it, to encourage the crowd to take the shield. Number one, I absolutely did not do that. No such thing happened. But the second thing is, I want people to appreciate I'm not a stupid person, and I've been very successful at creating the walkaway movement and making it a very successful organization.
Right.
If I think logically for a moment, why would I film myself doing that and then upload that video to Twitter so that my audience could watch me do it? Like, I would lose all of my donors and all of my supporters in 24 hours if I actually did it. It doesn't make any sense. But this is why they did this, is so that my donors and supporters would believe that I did that. That's
so,
why
Brandon,
they did this.
You said that you did. So you basically plea dealed to a misdemeanor, but you went to prison, didn't you? Or
so I was initially taken to jail when I was raided by the FBI, but when it finally came time for my sentencing on my Class B misdemeanor that I pled to, the judge in my case, Judge Dabney Friedrich, and I don't want anyone to ever forget that name, and I don't want anyone to ever forget the name of any of these D.C. judges, because they can never be allowed to rise up in our federal court system, and they can never be allowed to get anywhere near our Supreme Court. But Judge Dabney Friedrich went on and on like a lunatic about how egregious my actions were on that day, and how close we came to losing our democracy and this and that.
Right.
And she ended up sentencing me to 3 months of house arrest. So I had to get an ankle monitor, and I wasn't allowed to leave my apartment for 3 months under federal supervision. But then, in addition, she gave me 3 years of federal probation, which would have ended today, by the way, had I not been pardoned on Monday. And in addition, she gave me fines, fees, restitution, and court-ordered mental health services.
Oh, God. So how long were you in jail?
I was in jail for 2.5 days. I was on house arrest for 3 months, and I was on federal supervision for 4 years. Now,
the fact that Trump has pardoned you, does that, is this still on your record, or how does that work?
My understanding is that this is now no longer on my record, that it doesn't exist. And I'm happy to say, too, that the new administration, the Trump administration, has also removed the government website that the Biden DOJ put up. They put all of the January 6th defendants, like sex offenders. They put us on a registry so that when people would search our name, the top search result would be this government site that with these horrible allegations against all of us. And that site was finally taken down last night.
So, by the way, I want to let my listeners know that I had real problems with what happened on January 6th. And I think people who went into the Capitol, or anyone who assaulted a police officer, I think that they should have been convicted, and those were bad actors. But what really troubles me is that people who were not bad actors, and there were many of them who were crazy and did constitute a threat to our democracy and put people's lives in danger. But you're not among that group. And what you're saying to me, Brandon, is there are hundreds of others like you.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's nobody on January 6th who didn't make some really bad decisions, people who didn't initiate some violence or initiate some destruction. But people need to also understand that a lot of people who were convicted of assaulting police officers, first of all, didn't do that. But second of all, many of these people found themselves in a defensive posture because they were standing outside of the Capitol, and suddenly the Capitol Police began shooting people in the face with rubber bullets, hitting people in the head with batons, spraying tear gas at these people who were just standing there. And all of a sudden, some of these people put their hands up and said, no, and then they got charged with assaulting an officer. Again, I don't condone any of this. And by the way, I also wasn't there. That was on the other side of the building where I was. But we can all come together and agree that violence is bad, destruction is bad, but we have to have a uniform standard of justice in this country, whereas one group of people don't go to prison for 20 years for breaking a window, and other people get not charged at all, depending on who they voted for. And that's what's going on.
That is so true. I mean, here is a city where the Black Lives Matter people burned down buildings, assaulted their neighbors, stole things. Almost none of them were ever convicted of anything. And incidentally, if you folks, I don't know how many of you know this story, but in Wisconsin, when my good friend Scott Walker was the governor there, the left completely stormed the Capitol. They stormed the Capitol building and basically held the Capitol building hostage for many, many days. And none of those people were ever convicted of anything because they were left-wing protesters, not people on the right. And I think what really bothers me about this, among many other things, is the double standard that somehow they're righteous, but we're not.
Oh, the double standards are insane. I mean, first of all, what you just mentioned, the double standards of the violence in 2020 versus the very limited violence that happened on January 6th. But, when they forgive the violence of 2020, they say, oh, but this is centuries of racial injustice. Right. So we have to overlook that. Yeah, but okay, fine, except for the fact that they diminished the aspect that people were upset about the prospect of a stolen election in 2020. But right now, first of all, they said the election was stolen in 2016, and there's a great number of people saying the election is stolen in 2024. Not to mention that they claim that January 6th was, Trump and his supporters' attempt to steal, our democracy. So they understand what it means to be upset about the prospect of a stolen election. They just think that when we're the ones who think the election is stolen, we don't deserve to be heard, and we deserve to go in prison to prison for believing it.
So, Brandon, have you met with Donald Trump?
Not yet.
Okay, because I think you should, and
I agree.
There's so just because what he did was heroic, and it took a lot of guts for him to do it. Again, I'm not necessarily in favor of this blanket pardon because I do think there were some bad people who did belong in jail, but there are hundreds of innocent people whose lives were ruined and disrupted greatly by these false charges. So, well, Brandon, what's next for you now? You're a free man. These charges against you have been expunged from the record. You were the head of a major important organization called Walk Away. What's next for you?
Well, we just get back to work and continue our efforts of rebuilding the organization and everything we're doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is dedicate a lot of time, energy, and resources to the state of New Jersey and the state of Virginia, both of which have very important elections this year. They're going to be changing governors. I've been telling everybody for the last 6 months who will listen that, Walk Away, we have two major philosophies right now that we're asking people to embrace. Number one, every year now has to be viewed as an election year. We can't just get involved every 2 or 4 years. We have to be involved every day of our lives to make sure that we never end up in a situation again like we ended up in the last 4 years. And the second thing is that every election needs to be viewed as a national election. We can't just say, oh, well, it's New Jersey's governor or it's Virginia's governor. It doesn't really involve me. Well, we learned in 2020 what it means when a few governors in a few states have the power to sign an executive order and saying that they're going to unilaterally change the election law in a way that ends up swaying the outcome of the election for the entire country. So we need everyone to get involved every single day in every single place, and we're going to get into New Jersey and Virginia and be heavily involved in these races, and we're going to travel the country for the next 4 years, making sure we never again end up in a situation like we did for the last 4 years.
So one last question, Brandon, which is that I guess how long ago did you say it was that you had the march in Washington? Was that in 7 or 8 years ago?
October of 2018.
That's when I first met
Brandon. And then we
Brandon.
did another one in October of 2020.
So when you started Walk Away and you walked away from the Democratic Party, and by the way, I'm not a rah-rah Republican. I'm not here to tell you folks that Republicans are the solution to all our problems because they're not. But did you lose friends? Did you lose colleagues? Did people criticize you for leaving the party?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was brutal. I would say that I lost about 90% or more of my friends and relationships.
Wow.
Around the time I decided to walk away. And you had said earlier in this interview, you said, it was pretty controversial when I first started Walk Away. That's true. And I appreciate you acknowledging that and that being stated, because I look at where we are today when going into the 2024 election, it almost became a centerpiece of the Trump campaign. Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. And I look around and I'm like, it's almost become cool to walk away from the Democratic Party. Now, 7 years ago,
Brandon,
when
you walked away before it was cool.
That's exactly right. I walked away when people were like savagely trying to destroy our lives. Now it's like, you become an instant celebrity for walking away. But I'm glad we have that impact on changing the culture. I think it's important, and we just got to keep that momentum going.
And finally, so how do people get in touch with your organization one more time?
Go to walkawaycampaign.com. And what I would encourage people to do is go to walkawaycampaign.com/next, NEXT. If they take that extra step, it gives them 5 things they can do to stay in touch. Join our email list, our texting list, join our Facebook group. And if you're able to make a donation, please make a donation. But go to walkawaycampaign.com/next and sign up so that we can keep in touch with you.
Well, thank you, Brandon. I thank God you're a free man again. And thank you for what you've done for our country. Folks, the reason I wanted to bring Brandon on is this could have happened to any of us. And it's a scary story, but we all need to understand that our justice system is broken down. We'll be right back, folks. It's the More Money Show on WABC. What's that? Got it. Okay, so folks, I'm just still stunned by that story of Brandon Straka. He is a hero to me, and I've known him for a long time. As I said, my wife has become really good friends with Brandon, and it's something I really wanted everyone to understand of how sinister the left is. These are brutal people. They will do anything. They will destroy people's lives if we stand in their way. They don't like losing. And they use the jackboot of government to hold us down. And that's why it is so important that Donald Trump has won this election. By the way, just my last couple of minutes before we have one final segment with Ryan and Bob Payne. Did you see that Donald Trump, in just his first week in office, has solved the global warming problem? Because did you see that we had snow in Florida? I think that's probably in many areas they'd never even had snow before. And these are the people who tell us we have global warming. And of course, it's climate change. That's why they use the term climate change. Well, folks, it has been a wonderful week. I'm so proud to call myself American. I'm so proud that Donald Trump is doing everything he said he would do, and he's just getting started. Remember, I said on the show a couple of weeks ago, tighten your seatbelt, fasten your seatbelt, get ready, because it's going to be an amazing time ahead. He's just getting started. We have so much to do to make this country great again. I think we're going to have an incredible economic revival in this country, and I think it's going to everyone, from the poor to the middle class to the wealthy, will benefit from this. I think you're going to see Trumpism spread throughout the world. This is my prediction. I think we are going to see Trumpian candidates all over the world take out these arrogant, out-of-touch politicians. And yes, we do need to make Greenland. We need to acquire Greenland, just like we did Alaska, just like we did the Louisiana Purchase. I'm with Trump on that. I don't want to take it by force, but I want to acquire it from Denmark because it's important strategically to our economy. Okay, folks, I'm going to check out now. But before you check out, listen to what Bob and Ryan Payne have to tell you about how you can make more money.
Ryan Payne and Bob Payne back again on the More Money Show from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne, talking about the markets, the economy, and your retirement. The contrarian in me was always very bullish when markets were very low. Every economist was calling for a recession, and we were happy to be the most optimistic people in the room. But now the pendulum's swinging, and I feel like we're in this big booming bull market, which, Bob, you predicted, of course. And you're starting to see those animal spirits out. And I feel like people are starting to throw caution to the wind. And the contrarian in me says that's probably a big problem. And people are probably taking way more risk than they should be, and they could feel a lot of pain later. As always, no pun intended.
Well, it is that pain and suffering that I went through my first 10 years in the business way back in the 70s, where I realized that it's hard to keep people invested unless you have a goal in mind. So if you just invest for the concept of making money, right? Making money is not a goal. More of our more recent clients that are coming on board, they're in the I want to make money mode. And you don't realize that it's not a goal, right? Making money is not a goal. Why do you need to make money? I think that's really an important question.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, like as you're nearing or in retirement, especially, right? Because I mean, if you're 20, you might have time to make up the fact that if the markets go down 50%. But what's interesting, I don't know if you guys see this, but it seems like the baby boomers are more aggressive actually than the younger clients. And I don't know if that's because, like people my age, like we were very young and impressionable when the .com bubble in 2008 happened. I don't know, but it seems very reversed, which is interesting.
Baby boomers are always risk on, Bob.
They have been, except for, you go back to 2009 and the average asset allocation weighting towards equities was 39%. Now it's 63%, almost 64%. So a lot of it's a function of recency bias, which we talked about earlier, and investing in what's already up. It's just our human nature. I mean, we make our projections based on our most recent experience. So, but it is surprising though, because you have a lot of baby boomers, being 10 million turning 60, baby boomers turning 65 every day. And they are more aggressive, and they, I don't think they think we're ever going to die. We're ever going to, need the money or whatever. But it is kind of it's an interesting observation of what's going on right now, especially with a big boom and bull market to support everybody's belief system.
And there's a magical word here that I think everyone needs to write down. It's called rebalancing. Now more than ever, you probably need to rebalance your portfolio. And it's not fun to do, because you're always doing what you don't want to do. That means selling stocks while they're going up, or conversely, like we had last year, it was actually putting money in the market while it was doing nothing or it was slightly down. But these are the moves you have to make proactively to protect yourself and keep yourself in line. I mean, investing is more about a discipline than thinking what's going to happen next. Because I got news for you. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. And an asset allocation or a discipline protects you from that. And I'm seeing right now, like those risk parameters, they're just going out the window, and it's a huge problem.
You know what it sounds like to me, Court? Ryan's talking about common sense versus your spidey sense, right? I used to love Spider-Man because he knew when trouble was around. He had a spidey sense. He knew when trouble was coming. Well, as an investor, you don't know when trouble's coming. So you really have to use common sense. Now, what's the most common sense thing to conclude right now? Well, hey guys, it was 4 years ago. We had COVID hit. The Dow was at 18,000 4 years ago. We're at 43,000 today, right? So, all we're thinking about is, wow, it went from 18,000 to 43,000. Well, how about that trip down to 18,000? Anybody remember how that felt?
No, we forget. That's the beautiful thing about human behavior. We forget how we felt just like 12 months ago. And that's why invariably human nature makes us bad investors. And that's why you have to put the guardrails in place. The one philosophy we have at our firm when it comes to financial planning is you want to build as much certainty into your portfolio as possible. And we know markets going up year to year, that's not very certain. So when you predicate your portfolio on that for retirement, it's such a bad idea.
And there's really two reasons for this, right? I mean, we're talking about there could be a time where the markets go down and you want to make sure you're protected from that. So that's where being diversified and having things in safety like cash and bonds is important. But also the best thing you can do when the markets are down, like in a COVID or a 2008 or 2001, is buy back into the markets. But if you're 100% in the markets, you don't have cash on hand, you just have to wait for it to recover. But if you have that portion in there, that's what we did. If you guys remember during COVID, we called every single one of our clients. We were selling bonds and buying back into the markets. It's not that we had this crystal ball. We just said, this is like a once in a decade opportunity. Let's take advantage of it. And if by having that in there, we were able to do so.
That's a really good point, Court, because I'm seeing that phenomenon now. I remember through the 80s and the 90s, it got to the point where, wow, growth stocks always go up, Bob. So, why do we have bonds? Let's get rid of our bonds. We'll just be 100% in equities. And then, all the equities are great, but, growth stocks do better than everything else. So why don't we get rid of all our value stocks and our small cap stocks and real estate, and pipelines. And, I'll tell you what, the growth portfolio is doing really well, but this Cisco is really the best. It's driving all the return. So why don't we get rid of that and just own Cisco? Well, it's really hard to average into the market when your only holding is down 50% or 90%, right? So you need those alternative asset classes to have money to take advantage. So it really comes down to having that discipline, right? You want to stick to that discipline at all times, because on the upside, it's real easy. But when you have that 35, 40%, 50% decline, when Ryan says that's where you're going to make all your wealth, that's where the bear market opportunity is, it stinks when you don't have any money to add. And so, and that's why you need that discipline to act.
And that's why you put some dollars around that, right? If you have a $5 million portfolio, that means it's going down to $2.5 million in a bad market. And my fear is most of us don't know the risk that we have right now, because typically you have lots of different funds with different names in your portfolio. And then you're thinking, hey, maybe I'll buy a little bit of NVIDIA or Microsoft or Apple on top of that. But then you realize when you look at every fund that you own, they all own the same type of stocks that move in the same direction at the same time. So, we always like to say you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And a lot of these portfolios that are being built right now that you might have right now is built that way. And man, oh man, that's not a fun way to survive retirement, watching your portfolio go straight up with the potential to go straight down again. It's like my favorite ride of Great Adventure, but I don't think you want that as your portfolio, philosophy.
Those four most dangerous words, right? It's different this time. It's not different. We're not into a new virtuous cycle where, the economy only goes up and stocks only go up. So it's really important to recognize that we're all the same people we were 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I've been through these 50% declines. They're frightening. You don't realize that bull markets make you brave. Bear markets make you hide under the covers. And you can't put an order in when you're under the covers. So you can't take advantage of it. And, that's why, most people don't succeed as investors, right? Because they don't have a discipline. They don't have a strategy. And again, it's common sense, not spidey sense.
If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, myself and Bob and our team at Payne Capital will run for you our total financial master plan, and we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. There's not a firm out there that will do this work up front. We go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, and we'll hone in on every financial issue you need to address today, whether it's that income plan for retirement. How do you take Social Security? There's a lot of ways to take it, but one right way for you. How do you draw from your portfolio the most tax efficient way? We'll give you a full income plan, factor in inflation so you don't run out of money. We're going to look at diversification. Markets have been all over the place, up and down. Has your portfolio been extremely volatile? Or have you been sitting in cash? Paralysis by analysis, can't figure out what to do. We'll put together a full diversified investment game plan, show you how to grow your wealth, tie it to your goals, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you high cost, tax inefficient products, whether it's an annuity, mutual fund, insurance product, brokerage product. We're going to go through every investment you have, deep dive. We're going to show you how to reduce all the internal cost and optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make, it's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We literally have 4 slots left. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, all you need to do is call or text at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. If you call or text us right now at 844-752-6692, that's 844-PLAN-NYC, 844-PLAN-NYC.